Okay, so today we're going to be talking about looping through arrays and basically three different ways to loop through stuff. So some common things you'll get are for loops, while loops, and a recursive approach to solving problems. So the difference between these three things is basically what you want to do. A for loop is one of the most basic things that you're going to be using as you become a developer. So basic starts with for, some argument, and then we're going to execute some code. The arguments of the for loop are three parts. First, we're going to declare a variable called I. This is just a placeholder. It's just a variable. Doesn't mean anything. I have described it up here for use in the while loop and for recursion, but when you use a for loop, you don't have to define it beforehand. So we're going to start off by saying that I equals 0. And the reason we're doing that is just to use it as a counter. And then we're going to say while basically I is less than to be summed dot length. And the reason we're using less than is because in an array, the length of the array is always going to be one longer than the actual number of things in the array. So we want it to be less than. And then we're also going to say that we'll increment by 1 each time. So we see that I is just going to, every time this code executes, we're going to have I is going to go up by 1, and it's going to check to see that I is less than to be summed dot length. So what that means is it'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, go all the way over here. Once it gets to here, it'll run the check again. So that's a common question you might get is at the end of this, what is I going to be equal to? It's actually going to be equal to 1 more because it'll add up. It'll check to see that it's actually equal to the length, and then it'll stop. Anyway, so let's go ahead and write some code. So all we really have to do is say that we want the sum, which is that variable that I declared up there, and we're going to use this adding operator here, plus equals. So this will add and then set it equal to something, and that's going to be equal to be summed at I. So now we can see that I is just a placeholder. So when I is equal to 0, it says go to be summed at the array location 0, 1, and add it and set it equal to it. So it should say that plus 1, do it again for 2, so on and so forth. And then if we just go ahead and console log sum, and then let's execute this code. We see, boom, 1, 3, 6, 10, 36, all the way to 55. Perfect. So that's how you would do, this is how you would sum things up using a for loop. If we wanted to do the same thing in a while loop, that's going to be a little bit different. It's almost the same thing, but slightly different. So it says while some argument is true. So I'm going to say while I, there's a lot of different ways you can do this, is less than to be summed dot length, execute some code. So we will say at the bottom we want I++, and then we want to say sum plus equals to be summed at I. So you can see it's almost the exact same thing. Oh, I forgot to console log it. See, we get the same answer. Now the differences here is basically what do you want to do. You can use this for like a do while loop. So you can say while something do something, and that'll basically guarantee that this code runs, and then you'll check it and then you'll run it again. So this is it really just, you have to really think about what am I trying to do? And you decide which tool do you want for the job. They're basically doing the same thing in different ways. Recursion is something that a lot of people get confused by, and it's a little more nuanced, but basically what it is we have a function, and what happens at the end, somewhere in this function, we're going to call the function again. That makes it recursive. But whether or not it calls it is going to depend on some things. So we will say if, and in this case we will say we'll use I is less if I. We will go to be summed dot index of number. So what I'm doing here is I'm checking to say, okay, where is this number in this array? And I'm going to say if that's equal to be summed at length minus 1. So we're going to say that if since the length is always 1 more, if it's equal to right here, then this should be the last piece of code that we execute, right? This should be the last number that we're looking at. So then we'll say sum plus equals number, and then we're going to return console log final sum is sum. So that's the first condition. Then I'll say else. So if it's not the last number, and there's a lot of other cases we can put in here where it's like, okay, did I put in the wrong number? Is the number not in the array? Just for simplicity's sake, we're going to assume that you know what you're doing. So if it's not the last number, then we're going to take that number. We're still going to go sum. We're still going to go plus equals number. We're going to go I plus plus, and then we're going to go add numbers with to be summed at I. So you see right here, this is what makes it recursive. It's calling itself under a certain condition, and eventually another condition will be met where it'll end. And so outside of this function, we need to go add numbers, and to make it consistent, we go to be summed at I, and that should be 0. Go ahead and comment this guy out, and look at that. We get the same thing once again. Final sum is 55. It's always been 55. So this is all there really is to loops and recursion. This is very basic, but these are some tools that you can use and some ways of thinking about how to handle code, how to loop through things. And throughout my videos, I'll be showing you a little more examples of how to do that and how you apply it in reality. Thanks.